Howdy.
Howdy.
What session are we on today?
18.
All right, welcome to our 18th session. We're glad you're still with us.
Yes.
Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. In our last session, we had just finished Maria's longest letter to date. I think we're actually going to get a couple of longer ones still, believe it or not, but not on the same topic. At the end of that last session, we were talking about some of the strongest attributes or characteristics of the adepts. And one of those is the profound love of humanity, which is the only requirement to be truly a theosophist. You don't have to be a member of any particular society to be a theosophist, but you do have to have this deep love of humanity and be willing to dedicate a good portion of your life towards helping humanity, not necessarily in a material way, but in a spiritual way, teaching them how to do things, how to reduce the amount of suffering in their life. That's what their goal is and what our goal ought to be too, to help people learn enough of the information and the techniques that are needed to make that happen in their own life. So one thing that they demonstrate in their everyday activities that we've seen in these interactions with these two Englishmen is this equanimity that they have. They do get a little flustered sometimes, so that lets us know, hey, if even they get flustered and have a momentary outburst, it's not a problem. That's not a problem. And we're going to find out some of the other characteristics that too many people focus on. They're really not much of a problem. And we'll figure out what characteristics we really need to work on instead of these kind of superficial ones. So they recover quickly after they've had an outburst, kind of like boom, like a firecracker, and it's gone. That's the end of it.
I believe that's one of the hallmarks of an enlightened person. How fast can you come back to equanimity?
Yeah, exactly.
Living in the physical world, we're surrounded by polarities of all kinds, dualities, and we're never going to be exactly always in the center, or else even the masters aren't.
No.
That's a very interesting point, right? So how fast can we get back to our center?
Right.
Is it 30 seconds or is it 30 years?
And you're absolutely right. It festers. So for some people, they cannot let go of it. Even if someone cuts them off in traffic, 6 hours later, they're still fretting about it. It's kind of like the story that Eckhart Tolle tells about the two monks, and one of them carried a woman across a muddy puddle. And what happened?
And then hours later that evening, the younger of the two monks said, "Master, I can't hold it in any longer. I have to ask you, why did you carry that woman? We're not supposed to touch women. We're not supposed to do things like that." And what did the master say?
He said, "I set that woman down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" And that's what we need to pay attention to. Are we carrying junk in our minds that we should have got rid of a long time ago? Do you have any grudges that you carry? Do you have thoughts of revenge against certain people? If you do, you've got some serious work ahead of you. The goal is to be able to have a momentary loss of equanimity, and come right back to balance again. And that's what they do. The other part is that they, as I pointed out, their only upsets in life, for all intents and purposes, come from the humans that they are working with. If it were not for those human beings, their life would be total equanimity. It would be peaceful, blissful, living in absolute calm. But they choose, instead of doing that, to help us. And it's a sacrifice, but their everyday demeanor is this beautiful, blissful state. And we can see that in their writings. So if you have any intention of ever becoming one of their pupils, then that's what you have to develop before they will be able to work with you. There might be some serious exceptions for these two Englishmen. With their own chelas, they would not put up with some of the stuff that they're putting up with the two Europeans. So keep that in mind. We need to develop the same compassion, love, kindness, exude that at all times during your life. And then you have a really good chance of attracting their attention. There's one caveat, though. People who love to help other people often get taken advantage of. I know I myself and some of the people around me have tried to help people far longer than we should have. And what I learned is that by enabling somebody in their bad habits and their bad actions, we're actually delaying their progress. We're not helping. We think we're helping, but the truth is that they could have corrected that maybe years earlier if we had stopped helping them.
We think we're helping because in the moment we might be relieving some discomfort or some pain or some misfortune or perceived misfortune, but in the long run, you're right. We're just enabling them to keep perpetuating that without fixing the problem themselves.
There's a reason that they're in that predicament, and it's called karma. Nature knows way more than we do. It is far more intelligent than either one of us. So when nature has put someone in a predicament, sometimes we're tempted, oh, let me fix that for you. I can make it all right. Like a parent whose child got in trouble with the police and did something more than just getting a speeding ticket. And what do? They run down and they hire the best attorney. That attorney pulls all the strings. They throw several $1,000s at the problem, and problem solved. It has been, guess what? The judge decided not to pursue that. And so what happens? They do it again. They got away with it once, why not another time? So the best thing you can do sometimes is let people learn their lessons. For parents, this is one of the hardest things to do. We call it tough love. And in most cases, it's absolutely the best thing you could possibly do. Let them learn their lessons that nature is trying to teach.
One of the biggest pieces of pushback or points of pushback that we hear, and you might be thinking the same thing if you're listening to this right now, where's the compassion in that? Can we be compassionate citizens of the planet and members of the human family and still let people experience some pain or discomfort in order to learn their lessons? Where's the compassion? Are we supposed to do that? Is a big question. What's the answer?
The answer is you can have absolute compassion and still let them learn their life lessons. You can tell them flat out, I love you unconditionally and always will. And I'm going to let you figure this out on your own, because guess what? You will learn some valuable lessons in life. And they do. That's exactly what happens.
We don't need to get into our starfish story now, but for those of you who've read our book and read the starfish story, this relates to that 100%.
Yes, we think we're helping sometimes, but if we look at it from a different point of view, we're actually delaying their progress.
In the long term. In the short term, we may think that
So, yes, if you're a kind person, keep this in mind. There are givers and there are takers in the world. And guess what? The takers have no limits. They will never say, oh, you know what? I've taken enough stuff from you, so don't give me anything else. No, they have no limits. They will keep asking you and begging and pushing for additional help. Just one more chance. I promise I'll do it right this time. I've had that happen, and when I finally cut that person off and stopped rescuing them, I never heard from him again. And guess what? I assume he figured out how to survive on his own. So that's and we'll come back to this at different times, because one of the things we're interested in is helping people to solve problems in their everyday lives. If all of the theory and all of the teachings that we're getting from the Mahatmas has no application in our everyday lives, our meaning ordinary people, then what good is it? So the fact is, it has a lot of good. It has a lot of potential for helping people to understand how life works and to make their life less stressful and to give you the tools that you need to help other people make their lives less stressful. We can't solve anyone's problems. Believe it or not, we can only solve our own problems. But we can perhaps impart some of our wisdom to other people. That's the compassion. These adepts don't save their chelas every time they get in trouble. We'll see that. They sometimes just let them make mistakes without even saying anything, because mistakes are how you learn. I've made thousands of mistakes in my lifetime, and I don't regret it because I learned something from every single one. Yes, it was painful at the time, but guess what? I will never make that mistake again.
I want to emphasize just one thing that you said. If you happen to have interest in these things that we're sharing, and you find yourself watching our videos and studying, and you'll probably at some point encounter somebody else asking you a question: why are you doing this? Why are you studying this stuff? What does this do? Well, in the most practical sense, it's exactly what Terry's been saying. It's to reduce suffering. In the most general, overarching sense, it's to help reduce suffering on the planet. That is the reason we study the theory. Practice is where it happens, but study it to help reduce suffering for yourself and others on the planet.
It's that simple. It really is. That was the entire purpose of the Buddha. And we're simply following his advice. Yeah. All right, let's, before we get into letter number 30, let's set the stage here. They had, in August of 1881, HPB and all Sinnett and Hume had all met in Shimla, where Hume lives year-round, to inaugurate this Anglo-Indian branch, which ended up being called the Shimla Eclectic Branch. And they actually stayed there for several weeks. At the end of several weeks, HPB's master, Moria, sent her on a tour of various places in North India. Sinnett went back to his home in Allahabad, and he's going to receive a letter from HPB that we're going to read that shares some information from Moria. But let me first of all show you on a map here where we're talking about. This is a map of India. And just so you get some ideas of location and distance, down here is Bombay, where HPB normally is, but at this time she's way up here. She has left Shimla. She first went to Lahore, and now she's on her way back home. And Allahabad is where Sinnett is living currently. Shimla, up here, is where Hume is. So that will give you an idea of their various locations. Now, I'm going to read something that's kind of funny. This is actually a letter from the book Letters of H.P. Blavatsky to A.P. Sinnett. So this is the day before she wrote the letter that we're going to read. And
the day before she received it, or he received it, you mean?
Yes. Okay. The day before he received it, correct. And she's only a few miles from where she wrote while she was here. It's a place called Saharanpur, very close to this second place. And remember Ross Scott, the young Irishman, he's the secretary of this new branch, the Shimla Eclectic Branch. So HPB tells Sinnett, arrived last night. No, yesterday morning. It's Scott who came last night. Tomorrow morning we'll start for Dehradun with Scott. Why do you call me lazy? Why do you reproach me with being silent and not writing? Why do you calumniate me and say I swear? I do not. She does swear, but she says she doesn't swear. She said, saw the boss, meaning Moria, saw the boss, of course I did. But how can I repeat to you all he said, since it is difficult for me to write a sane letter, and you do not patronize insane ones? So I want to give you just an idea of her, how she communicates with Sinnett in some of these letters. It's kind of funny, actually. She said, there never was a genius but was cracked, and I am a genius, or so Williams says at least. And now I did not hear or see or smell the boss for 3 days. He must have prigged your letter, though, for I see he knows what you do. How many times did you write to him? He is very cross, at least was when I last saw him in Lahore. Called me a lunatic also for wanting to say my mind to the editor of the C&M Sewer. The C&M was a newspaper, and it happens that the owners, it's called the Civil and Military Gazette, an English language newspaper that was in Lahore. And the owners of it really, really did not like Theosophy. They were devout Christians, Protestants. And remember, the owners of the Pioneer, which is the newspaper that Sinnett is the editor for, well, these same people bought his paper. So he now has bosses who are not at all friendly towards Theosophy. So that's going to come in to play here. So the name of that newspaper in Lahore was called the Civil and Military Gazette. HPB calls it the C&M Sewer because of the stuff you'll see.
This is the first time we're actually getting to hear HPB's voice.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never heard that before.
That's cool. This is how she speaks in everyday language. The latter, meaning the newspaper or the editor, came out again, not with the libelous, but a most impertinent, stupid letter. Well, I will not die happy unless I see him horsewhipped by someone, and there are several Englishmen who want to do it. But where the deuce is my boss, since somewhere...
Where the deuce is my boss?
Since he blew me up, I did not see him. I guess he must be roosting somewhere near our KH. Now, remember, KH is in
state of
Samadhi for 3 months. She says, I assume he must be roosting somewhere near our KH. Mr. Hume, apparently, Sinnett had asked about Mr. Hume. Mr. Hume? Why, Mr. Hume never said a word about the brothers since you left, except to sneer at them once or twice. He said to me before leaving, in a week, I will have done my work of stray feathers, which was the articles that he was writing about his bird projects. I will have finished my work on stray feathers, and I must receive a manuscript from Moria if he wants me to go on. The disinherited wants to write to you, he says, if you will permit him, through Damodar. And then she signs it, yours in Jesus, H.P. Blavatsky.
She's goofy. Why is she saying that?
Because she's being funny.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she has a sense of humor. She gets riled up, as you can see. She's kind of riled up here, but it's not a vicious type of energy.
She's lively.
Yeah, she's very high strung. So that will set the stage for this letter number 30 that you're going to read to us.
Letter number 30, received at Allahabad, November 4th, 1881.
So this is the next day from the letter that I was reading from.
This letter was written by HPB. The first part is her own comments to Sinnett, and the rest was dictated to her by Moria. She follows Moria's dictation with some more remarks of her own. Finally arrived last night, late from Saharanpur. The house is very good, but cold, damp, and dreary. Received a whole heap of letters, and answer yours first. Saw Moria at last, and showed him your last letter, or rather, Benemadhab's, on which you have scratched a query. It is the latter that Moria answers. I wrote this under his dictation, and now copy it.
So this is Moria speaking to HPB with information he wants her to transmit to Sinnett.
I was going to just say that this sounds completely different than her voice in the last letter. So this is...
so now she's like in Chela mode.
And it's not even her thoughts that are... It's not her. Moria is speaking through her, and she's writing it. Okay. I wrote to... So here it goes. Here's the letter. I wrote to Sinnett my opinion on the Allahabad Theosophists.
And then HPB inserts a little thing.
And then she inserts, not through me, though. Adityaram B. wrote a foolish letter to Damodar, and Benimadhab writes a foolish request to Mr. Sinnett. Because KH chose to correspond with two men who proved of the utmost importance and use to the society, they all, whether wise or stupid, clever or dull, possibly useful or utterly useless, lay their claims to correspond with us directly too. Tell him, Sinnett, that this must be stopped. For ages, we never corresponded with anyone, nor do we intend to. What has Benimadhab or any other of the many claimants done to have a right to such a claim? Nothing whatsoever.
So this is the can of worms that was opened up when the Mahatma KH agreed to start communicating with human Sinnett. All of a sudden, everyone who is a member of the Theosophical Society, I want to communicate with them too, please, can you transmit this question to them? I want an answer from them.
Well, that hasn't changed to this day.
No, it hasn't.
It's gotten exponentially more prevalent. Everyone's talking to a master these days.
Right. They all, of course, we all want to.
They join the society, and though remaining as stubborn as ever in their old beliefs and superstitions, and never having given up caste or a single one of their customs, they expect to see and converse with us and to have our help in everything. I will be pleased if Mr. Sinnett says to every one of those who may address him with similar pretensions the following, quote, "The brothers desire me to inform one and all of you natives that unless a man is prepared to become a thorough theosophist, that is, to do as Damodar Mavalankar did, gave up caste entirely," this is very interesting, "as well as his old superstitions, and show himself a true reformer, especially in the case of child marriage, he will remain simply a member of the society with no hope whatever of ever hearing from us." That's interesting. Mm-hmm. The society forces no one to become a theosophist of the second section. It is, wait, what's the second section?
All right. At one time, when they were still trying to figure out the organization of the society, its function, and what their aims and goals were going to be, they decided that it should be divided into 3 sections. The first section was the Mahatmas themselves. The second section was their accepted chelas, the ones that the Mahatmas were working with directly and who could transmit messages from them and information from them. The third section was all other people who had joined the society for whatever reason.
Did that somehow evolve into the esoteric system section?
Not directly.
Not directly, okay. It is left up to the member at his choice. It is useless for a member to argue, quote, "But I am one of a pure life, a teetotaler and an abstainer from meat and vice. All my aspirations are for good," end quote. And at the same time is building by his acts and deeds an impassable barrier between him and us. And that relates mostly to the purity of thoughts and emotions and energy and intentions.
Yeah, so they're willing to do these outward gestures, thinking that, oh, I'm very pure. But the masters have other ideas.
What we have, the disciples of the true arhats, of esoteric Buddhism and of Sangyas, to do with the Shastras and orthodox Brahmanism.
All right, Sangyas is a Tibetan honorific that they apply to the Buddha. So whatever he uses the term Sangyas, it's a very respectful term for the Lord Buddha. And he says, what the heck does esoteric Buddhism and the Buddha have to do with the Shastras and orthodox Brahmanism? So basically, these Hindu theosophists were wanting to keep their old traditions, maintain their caste, and yet they thought that they were qualified to be pupils, chelas of the masters. And Maurya says, no.
This is very interesting that the masters are attempting to move people out of the Hindu kind of strict framework of tradition, of superstition and caste system and hierarchy of that nature.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's exactly right.
Yeah.
He'll cover a little bit more on that.
We may not have heard the word arhat before.
Oh, arhat is the 4th initiation.
In the spiritual hierarchy.
In the spiritual hierarchy. So arhat is one step away from a full adept.
So he says, what have we, the disciples of the true arhats of esoteric Buddhism, to do with Shastras and Orthodox Brahmanism? Yeah,
I'm not sure why because they are already arhats.
Yeah.
Maybe he means other arhats.
Or the students of theirs. There are 100,000 fakirs, sannyasins, and sadhus leading the purest lives, and yet, being that they are on the path of error, have never had an opportunity to meet, see, or even hear of us. This is also interesting. So, they're on the path of error because, so fakirs, sannyasins, and sadhus, for those of us who haven't heard the terms before, basically refer to spiritual aspirants who give up worldly possessions and pursue a spiritual path by living very simply, usually going out into nature somewhere, the mountains.
But they still have their religious traditions. They're completely holding on to these so tightly and aren't willing to give up all of that old philosophy to prepare themselves for something new. And they said, no matter how pure they are in every other way, if they can't get rid of that superstitious belief, we can't work with them.
Their forefathers have driven away from India the followers of the only true philosophy upon earth. Wow. Their forefathers have driven away from India the followers of the only true philosophy upon earth. And now it is not for us to come to them, but for them to come to us if they want to. This is saying the only true philosophy. There is only one ancient wisdom.
Yes, there is.
This is wonderful stuff.
And I want to read something here from the Key to Theosophy, where HPB says, in India, and she's talking about the time prior to the Buddha, in India, the Brahmins, jealous of their superior knowledge and excluding from it every caste except their own, had driven millions of people into idolatry and almost fetishism. Buddha had to give the death blow to an exuberance of unhealthy fancy and fanatical superstition resulting from ignorance, such as has rarely been known before or after. He had to arrest, first of all, this muddy torrent of superstition to uproot errors before he gave out the truth. Jesus, who reminds his disciples that the mysteries of heaven are not for the unintelligent masses, but for the elect alone, therefore spake he to them in parables. So both of them, Buddha and Jesus, made a distinction between the masses who wanted some magic way to make their life better and the true aspirants who were willing to give up everything in order to gain this wisdom.
Which of them is ready to become a Buddhist, a Nastika, as they call us? None.
Nastika means a non-believer, and it's an epithet. It's kind of like a Gentile, not one of us. They're out there somewhere. So yeah, the Orthodox Brahmins consider them non-believers, less than.
The masters?
Yeah.
That's wild.
They call us Gnostikas. They're non-believers.
Those who have believed and followed us have had their reward. Mr. Sinnett and Hume are exceptions. Their beliefs are no barrier to us, for they have none. They have no beliefs, because they're not Hindu.
No, because they're not religious.
We're not religious at all? Okay.
If they were devout Christians, there's no way they could work with
Right,
them.
it'd be the same thing, yeah. They may have bad influences around them, bad magnetic emanations, the result of drink, society, and promiscuous physical associations, resulting even from shaking hands with impure men. But all this is physical and material impediments which, with a little effort, we could counteract and even clear away without much detriment to ourselves.
Read that again.
Yeah, let's read that again.
This is profound.
That is. They, meaning Sinnett and Hume, may have bad influences around them, bad magnetic emanations, the result of drink, society, and promiscuous physical associations, resulting even from shaking hands with impure men. But all this is physical and material impediments, which, with a little effort, we could counteract and even clear away without much detriment to ourselves. They're saying they can clear away the physical, but that's energetic too. It's not physical. Right. It's also energetic that they can clear away. Wow.
Right. So, all of these people who think that by being a vegetarian and not drinking alcohol, not smoking, that they are now purified and they're ready for all of this teaching, that's not how it works.
That's the easy part.
That's the easy part.
It's easy to choose something vegetable versus meat. That's easy.
Thank you. He says, we could wipe that away easily. That's not the real detriment. The real detriment is that you have superstitions and that you are not purified in your mind and in your actions.
We make judgments, we have separations, we have negative thinking.
We hold grudges, we talk bad about people, we have negative energy around us.
That is so interesting. The masters say that that's the impediment, not the fact that some of them are eating meat or even smoking. HPB was a meat eater and smoked, and
Yeah, exactly. And they had no problem working with her.
It's the higher qualities, the more subtle things that people think are the less important aspects. No.
So, and he mentions magnetism that you pick up from other people around you. Yes, we do need to, as much as possible, get away from that if we can. In some cases, there's not a heck of a lot you can do about it. Even the masters have to travel among the crowds sometime.
Not so with the magnetism and invisible results proceeding from erroneous yet sincere beliefs. Faith in the gods and God with a capital G and other superstitions attract millions of foreign influences, living entities, and powerful agents around them, with which we would have to use more than ordinary exercise of power to drive them away. We do not choose to do so.
One other thing that I wanted to mention about these influences is how some schools, esoteric societies, insist on chastity within their members. If you're having relations with a person who that you're not married to, no, you can't be a member. The masters don't have a problem with that. They do have a problem with someone who does anything that would harm another person, and that it would include having an affair with your friend's wife or something. That is a problem. But discrete relationships with a consenting adult, where there's love involved, they don't have a problem with that.
We do not find it necessary or profitable to waste our time waging war on the undeveloped planetaries, meaning humans who are going through the process of evolution.
No, the undeveloped. This is a kind of new term. He's really talking about the brothers of the shadows. They're the unprogressed planetaries.
Undeveloped planetaries, okay, who delight in personating gods.
Yes.
Personating gods.
Right.
Personating, like personifying? Personifying a god?
Impersonate. Well, they're impersonating gods. Remember, we talked about how the masses have these ideas of what God is like, or they're any particular god, a Hindu god, or the god of the Muslims. They have this very particular idea, and this is what he's talking about. These are elementals that animate these thought forms that are enormous. They're huge, and they're very powerful. So this is what he's referring to.
Wow. We do not find it necessary or profitable to waste our time waging war on the undeveloped planetaries who delight in personating gods and sometimes well-known characters who have lived on Earth. There are Dhyan Chohans, and there are Chohans of darkness. Whoa. Not what they term devils, but imperfect, quote, intelligences, which are like these entities you're referring to, who have never been born on this or any other earth or sphere, and who will never belong to the, quote, builders of the universe, the pure planetary intelligences who preside at every Manvantara, while the dark Chohans preside at the Pralayas. Interesting.
Yeah, so these are powerful beings only because
we give them thoughts. We think about them and
we
create
give them the energy to exist.
Explain this to Mr. Sinnett. I can't. Tell him to read over what I said to him, to them, in the few things I have explained to Mr. Hume, and let him remember that, as all in this universe is contrast, so the light of the Dhyan Chohans and their pure intelligence is contrasted by the Mamo Chohans.
That's a term, obviously, that refers to these dark Chohans.
Interesting. And their destructive intelligence. These are the gods that Hindus and Christians and Mohammedans and all others of bigoted religions worship. Yikes.
Yikes.
That's
it's like, okay, you're being put on notice here. See, read that again.
Wow. These are the gods that Hindus and Christians and Mohammedans and all others of bigoted religions worship. And so long as their influence is upon their devotees, we would no more think of associating with or counteracting them in their work than we do the red caps on earth, whose evil result we try to mitigate, but whose work we have no right to meddle with as long as they do not cross our paths.
Yeah, so they don't have the right to meddle with the evildoers, because if they do, then they're creating more karma for themselves, and they will attract the ire of these individuals who, if anyone challenges their power and tries to reduce it, will come at them with a fury. So they avoid them at all cost.
We probably need to explain why he's saying that these are the gods that Christians and Mohammedans worship. Now, Christians do believe in a capital G God, and then manifesting in three parts, well, not manifesting, appearing as the Trinity. And which of the Trinity would be the planetary that is undeveloped, or what's the relation there? The whole thing? Should we even talk about that?
He's saying that it's a mirage. It's a superstition. This is not a god in any sense. Like a planetary spirit is an actual god, someone who actually does something for humanity.
What we described earlier about how we give power to entities in the astral and other realms, the concept of a man in the clouds, the concept of Jesus Christ being a god, the concept, not Jesus Christ the man, the concept of him being God, that's the illusion.
Right.
Jesus was a man who was a wise teacher, but we're talking about the concept.
Very enlightened.
Yes, and changed many people on earth. But the concept, the mental adoration, is the aggrandizement? Is that
aggrandizement?
That's the problem,
right? No, anyone who is religious of any religion can be a member of the Theosophical Society, any Theosophical Society, but they are not qualified to become a chela, and he's pointing that out in black and white here. Wow. No qualms about it. If you aren't willing to give up all of that, just like Damodar did, he was a Brahmin. He was from a wealthy family. He had everything as far as an Indian was concerned. He was set for life, and yet he gave up all of that to follow his master because he said, "I know the truth when I see it, and I'm done with that part, and I'm following you guys." Wow. So yeah, if you're not willing to give up old superstitions, there's not much they can do for you or with you.
This part of the letter is now HPB is speaking for herself. You will not understand this, I suppose, but think over it and you will. Moria means here that they have no right or even power to go against the natural or that work which is prescribed to each class of beings or things existing by the law of nature. The brothers, for instance, could prolong life, but they cannot destroy death, not even for themselves.
All right, so this is important.
This sounds different than her other languaging also. She's more professional here.
Right, because she's talking on behalf of the master.
Okay.
So yeah, I wanted to point out the difference. In other letters, she's joking and, she's venting sometimes. But when she's operating with her Mahatma, she is dead serious. But what did she say now? Say that again. Read that again.
Sure. The brothers, for instance, could prolong life, but they cannot destroy death, not even for themselves.
All right. So that is the case. For example, they prolonged her life 2 or 3 times. When she was very near death, one of them usually Moria, came and infused life force into her so that she could live a longer period of time. Otherwise, she would have died. And the other point is they cannot destroy death, meaning if a person has died, that the silver cord, sometimes I've never heard them talk about the silver cord, but if the soul, the ego, has actually left the body, it's a cut, it's a break. They cannot reverse that. So anyone who thinks that they can raise someone from the dead, she's saying no, that does not happen.
They can, to a degree, mitigate evil and relieve suffering, but they cannot destroy evil. And I assume the way they mitigate it would be, again, with prana, with creating a shield, a shell, a bubble, or more prana to move through it,
well,
maybe?
and they plant good vibrations, good energy next to someone to try to, like if someone is dealing with feelings of depression or hate or something, they can try to mitigate that by giving them an opportunity to latch onto something else.
Infuse different vibrations.
Right,
sure,
right.
That does make sense. No more can the Dhyan Chohans impede the work of the Mamo Chohans. And these are the highly elevated members of the hierarchy.
No, the Mamo Chohans
the
are
Dhyan,
the dark brothers.
The Dhyan Chohans, just because we're mentioning
The
that a lot.
Dhyan Chohans,
the very
yes,
high members.
Those are.
They cannot impede the work of the dark.
Dhyan Chohan
brothers.
is a planetary spirit.
Okay. It says that so she's saying they can't impede the work of the dark brothers.
No,
but they can mitigate
because
it.
they are doing a job. They are part of nature. They're divine also. Evil is also divine, because if you only had good influence in the world, where's the challenge? There's nothing. Everything would be perfect. It would be a paradise.
The concept of polarity and duality wouldn't exist, but it certainly does exist.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to have, if you have good, you have to have evil, because without evil, good, you wouldn't even recognize it. You wouldn't know what good is, because everything is good.
And there'd be no real purpose of existence.
So yeah, even evil has its purpose, and it is divine, part of the plan.
They can, to a degree, mitigate evil and relieve suffering, but they cannot destroy evil. No more can the Dhyan Chohans impede the work of the Mamo Chohans, for their law is darkness, ignorance, destruction, etc., as that of the Dhyan Chohans is light, knowledge, and creation. The Dhyan Chohans answer to Bodhi, divine wisdom, and life in blissful knowledge, and the Mamos are the personification in nature of Shiva, Jehovah, and other invented monsters with ignorance at their tail. Wow. Other invented monsters.
Well, remember,
Wow.
when I grew up in the 1950s, people, first of all, believed in corporal punishment, spare the rod and spoil the child. So, yeah, children were whipped on a regular basis. Because,
Spare the rod.
well, it's a saying from the Bible. If you spare the rod, you are spoiling the child.
Oh, okay.
So don't be afraid to whip their butt. And that was common, even in the 50s and 60s.
Now, these are HPB's words, though. This isn't the master speaking through her.
In the last part, yes.
She says these Mamos, the dark lords, if you will, are the personification of Shiva, which Shiva is part of the Holy Trinity in Hinduism. However, Shiva's job,
The destroyer.
is to, yes, he's the dancer who dances in a destructive manner that like whirlwinds everything away so something new can be built. It's not considered a negative thing, but when you personify the destructive aspect of it, I guess it certainly most definitely could be destructive, negative.
So exactly, each one fulfills a role in the plan of evolution. You have to have both.
Invented monsters.
Invented monsters.
Wow.
Yes. So obviously they consider, and says the same thing that they do. She doesn't teach anything that is different from them, that these are superstitions. Either they're real, they're really the beneficent forces in nature, like the Dian Chohans are, or they are invented in somebody's mind. And in most cases, they were created by people who said, ooh, these people are afraid of things. I started to say, too, the other thing that people believed in when I was a kid was the fear of God. Put the fear of God in people. They wanted you to fear God. Oh, no, I'm going to be punished forever if I do something wrong that my parents tell me not to do, or the priest tells me not to do. Yeah, these priests found out hundreds of thousands of years ago that they could have total control over people if they could say, you know what, I can help you mitigate that suffering, that fear. I'll give me a little money and I'll make sure that God's okay with you. And it comes down to pretty much that.
The last sentence of Moria's is this, quote, "Tell Sinnett then that for the sake of those who desire to learn and have information, I am ready to answer the 2 or 3 inquiries of Benimadhab from the Shastras." But we didn't talk about who Benimadhab is.
Yeah, he's the one she mentioned at the beginning of the letter. The two who were asking for.
Oh, just one of those members who were asking to correspond.
One of the Hindu members.
So he says he's ready to answer 2 or 3 of his inquiries, but I will enter into no correspondence with him or any other. Interesting. Let him put their questions clearly and distinctly to Mr. Sinnett, and then I will answer them through you.
So after this long diatribe where he says, I'm not going to answer everybody's question that comes to me, he says, well, okay, I'll answer 2 or 3 questions, but
through you, not
through him. Yeah,
I won't talk
I'm
to him.
not going to get into communication with these 2 guys. Tell one of them, Benimadhab, to ask specific questions to Sinnett on behalf of both of them. I will answer those 2 or 3 questions, and that's it.
We're almost to the end of the letter here. I send you my uncle's letter just received by me.
Now, this will come up later. This is strictly from HPB now.
He says, as my translation of his Russian letter shows, that he wrote the same to you. I suppose that by this time it is pretty well proved that I am I, and not someone else. My uncle, being now adjunct or assistant minister of the Interior, is a person who can certainly be trusted unless the C&M invents a new version and says that we have forged the documents. The C&M.
The newspaper,
Yes.
C&M newspaper, they're all getting up in arms now against Theosophy, against HPB, spreading lies and rumors and disparaging them, sometimes outright libel.
But my uncle says in his official letter to me that Prince Dondukov is going to send me an official document to prove my identity, and so we will wait. Yours in the love of Jesus, H.P. Blavatsky.
Again, she signed that way. Prince Dondukov was a prince in Russia. Remember, HPB's grandmother was a Russian princess, so they had ties to royalty, and Prince Dondukov knew her family. These newspapers were spreading lies that she was just a commoner from Russia who was a philanderer and an adventuress, trying to make a quick buck off of some ignorant people. And she's trying to at least give them a chance to know the truth. Whether they'll accept it or not, who knows?
And then after she signs her letter, why the deuce does the, quote, boss want me to go to Allahabad now? I can't be spending money to go there and back. I have to go by Jaipur and Baroda, and he knows it. What all this means is more than I can tell. He made me go to Lahore, and now it's Allahabad, 2 exclamation marks.
So she's back to her ranting again. And it's kind of understandable because Moria sent her on a mission he wanted her to go, well, actually, he had her come to Lahore to meet him. She hadn't been physically in his presence for a while. She had met KH, remember, when he diverted his trip to come see her when she was all in a dither over Alcott. So she had seen KH several months before, and now she has seen Moria again after many months of absence. And but she's saying, first he has me come to Lahore, then he sends me here, and now he wants me to go to Allahabad, and he's got these other places for me. But this is the way they work. They don't always tell their chelas their long-term plan. They may give them a couple of steps, and part of the reason for that is anything can change at a moment's notice. So if you're wanting to be a chela, you have to be able to take their advice and then all of a sudden switch directions if they tell you you need to be somewhere else instead. You have to have some abilities to do whatever it takes and to make adjustments on the spur of the moment.
Letter number 36.
All right. This one, by the way, notice that the last letter was number 30, and now we're going to 36. So even in the chronological edition, there was at least one mistake in the order. So this one wouldn't make sense if we inserted it where they had it. So this is where it should have been.
Now, did the chronological book had it out of place, but you placed it here because you can tell the dates?
Well, no, they on the website theosophy.wiki they said, yeah, this letter is out of place, so I'm going with that.
Got it. My impatient friend, allow me, as one having some authority in your theosophical meetings, to empower you to, quote, ignore the rules for a short time. Remember, you are the only one now. Mr. Hume is fully engrossed in his index and expects me to write to him and make puja first. Puja's worship.
Remember in HPB's letter, she said that Hume was ignoring the masters and said, well, if they want me to do anything, they have to write. He has to approach me first. I'm not going to ask anything.
I am too tall for him to reach my head very easily if he has any intention of covering it with the ashes of contrition. Nor will I put on a sackcloth to show repentance for what I have done.
All right, now this is from the Bible. Someone who was showing humility or repentance for some supposed sin would wear sackcloth, which was basically a very coarse cloth made out of goat hair, which is scratchy, itchy, and cover themselves with ashes to diminish themselves, to say, oh, I'm this poor, miserable sinner.
Not supposed to repent their sins.
Yeah. I guess even in the time of the Bible, they still continue to do that.
If he writes and asks questions, that's well and good. I'll answer them. If not, I will keep my lectures for someone else. Received your letter. I know your difficulties. We'll see to them. Great will be the disappointment of KH if upon returning to us he finds so little progress done. Oh no. You are sincere. Others put their pride above all. Then those Allahabad theosophists, the pundits, and babus. They do nothing and expect us to correspond with them. Fools and arrogant men. Moria.
Babus are basically clerical workers, the average workers in India at the time. So, yeah, they've done nothing special to attract our attention, and yet they think that somehow they have earned it. So this gives us really good idea of what's important as far as the characteristics we need to develop. Which ones are really important? Obviously, not whether or not you're a vegetarian, whether or not you're a teetotaler, whether or not you smoke, even whether or not you have relations outside of
Marriage.
ordained marriage by someone in authority. Those are all things that, if there's anything wrong with them, can be fixed relatively easily. But these other things cannot. So that tells us where we need to place our emphasis. And it is on gaining control of your emotions. And the only way you can do that is by controlling your mind. And the only way you can do that is through meditation.
It starts with the mental processes, then it trickles down from there.
Always. Always. So don't try to work from the ground up. Immediately work on meditation to get in touch with your higher self. Everything else will fall into place.
I'm so glad you said that. Yes, the daily meditation, learning to focus the thoughts, and then emotions will follow, then physical body it'll all line up. Mm-hmm. My goodness.
No, we're like Sisyphus trying to push the boulder up the mountain if you try to do it the other way. And people fool themselves for decades thinking, oh, I'm so devout. Surely the masters will recognize me very soon because I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. Mm-hmm. Well, you kind of have to wake yourself up and smell the coffee and realize, maybe I'm not doing something right. What do I need to change? If you're not getting the results that you're hoping for and have hoped for 30, 40, 50 years, then the problem is not that you haven't done it long enough. It's that you're probably doing the wrong thing.
That's very, very true. Wow.
Yeah, self-transformation is tough. It really is. But if you're not willing to do the hard part, then you're not going to make much progress. Words for the wise. All right. Is that going to wrap it up for today? I think we've had enough excitement.
We have.
It's been quite interesting. All right. We've got another really good letter ahead of us, number 31, because we're going back to the regular order. And all good stuff. There's something new in every single episode.
Thank you for being with us. Please leave comments, ask questions. We'll do our best to answer them. And we'll see you in the next video.
Yes, we will.